On today's show, how can Christians minister to people who have miscarriages? Today, on The View from a Pew.
Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
Welcome to The View from Pew. This is not J. Michael McCoy. This is Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat. I'm joined here in the studio with Maddie. Glad to see you here, Maddie, today.
Good.
And Father Tattoo, Dan's in the production booth doing his wonderful usual job. And today he has a special job of making me look good. Can you do that? It's a tough assignment, isn't it?
That is the impossible task, isn't it?
You do it. You can make Matt look good. Reasonable.
See, the problem with Father
You
Tattoo...
just sit down. I've got a surprise for you, Maddie.
The problem with Father Tattoo is that he's too honest. He just speaks his mind and tells it like it is. But Mac is out, and I always like to say Mac is out on assignment. So, it makes it sound like pretty important stuff. So he's out on assignment. But today's show, our guest is Abby Hummel. Abby is from Ames, Iowa. And Abby, as you notice, I mentioned in the beginning of the show, we were talking about how can Christians minister to people who miscarry. And from what you have told me before we started, that you have had not just one, but two miscarriages.
Yeah, that's right. I've been married for 4.5 years, and during that time, my husband and I have suffered the loss of at least 2 children in miscarriage, once in 2010 and then again in 2011.
Yeah, and for me, I know I have 3 kids, and I've never experienced that myself, so I have no idea what it would be like to experience that even once. But for you, it was twice. Mm-hmm. And so I have to assume that when these things happen the first time, you're pretty anxious about, well, is it going to happen a second time?
Exactly. And I think, too, there's the first time, I know that everyone's different, but the first time it happens, usually, there's, your doctors will tell you, statistically, this is a fluke. It's pretty common, but it's probably a fluke. Chances are next time you'll be fine. And then when it happens again, I think there's a certain level of kind of paranoia and like, am I high risk now? Is this going to be, just a long-term part of my life instead of just, a little fluke on the path to having a baby?
Mm-hmm. Well, what do the doctors say when it happens the second time?
Statistically, even the second time doesn't necessarily put someone at high risk, but it's still really tragic either way. And I would say it's, a very sad thing that I went through this twice. And certainly I grieve that, but I also want to be careful when I talk about that, because even someone who's just gone through this once has still suffered a loss that is worth grieving, and it's something that we should be encouraging and supporting people in the midst of. So technically, it's not until you have this experience 3 times that you become sort of this medical problem that there's definitely something that needs to be fixed, but it's still a very tragic thing along the way as well.
Well, now, how long did you go with your pregnancy?
Not far at all. The first time 8 weeks, and the second time 6 weeks. So that's still, nowhere near out of the first trimester. But I'm sure we'll get into, that's still a very tragic loss. And as Christians, when we talk about life beginning at conception and that the Lord forms children in the womb, even at the very, very earliest stages, that this is a child that bears the image of God. And, those children are created by God and loved by Him and loved by their parents. And, I can say I loved my little babies ferociously, and I would have done anything to protect them. And, and so when we talk about this, it's easy to say, I didn't know I was pregnant even for that long, but it was still, a very valuable person that I was very excited to raise and to have be my child.
Yeah, and like I was saying, it's something that you have to experience, and once you do, then there are a lot of emotions that take place, not just for you, but also for your husband, correct?
Yeah, and it's everyone, handles things differently, and so I know that, my husband's grief and his emotions were expressed differently than mine. And so that sometimes causes friction in marriages because men and women grieve so differently. And so I know I went to the emergency room during one of my miscarriages. And so later when we got the bills, that night I said, oh, I got this bill in the mail. It's for, I can't believe how much money this is. And my husband just got really, really angry. And I'm sitting there thinking he's more angry about this ER bill than he is about our baby that's gone. And I was so upset. And later I realized he has his own set of emotions, and that's just how he was expressing it. But, I think that's very common that people go through things differently and express it differently, and that can cause friction in marriages. And also some men, would say that this loss is maybe not as concrete to them because for the woman, she's carrying the child in her body, and this, oftentimes very painful, very invasive physical thing is what happens when there's a miscarriage, and it's happening in her body. And so it's a very personal violation, it feels like to her. And for a lot of men, it's a little bit more a little bit more theoretical and not quite as personal.
So what you're saying there is when you have a miscarriage, then you have to go through a certain medical procedure.
Sometimes and sometimes not, but either way, I think it's pretty traumatic either way. And sometimes I was lucky that I didn't really have a lot of problems afterwards. Some women have very significant complications afterwards that last for months and even years. Mm-hmm.
Now, do you tend to blame yourself, or does your spouse blame himself, or do you try to figure out, well, how could this happen? Am I at fault?
Sometimes. I was actually sitting on the floor with my husband last night, and we were using a little step stool to set our drinks on, and I said, I refinished this step stool because I refinished this when I was pregnant, and I wanted to have it done for when the baby came. And then I remembered I spent a month thinking maybe the mask I wore when I was using all those chemicals wasn't strong enough, and maybe that had something to do with it. And I think a lot of people have very similar emotions. Like, I shouldn't have had that glass of wine before I knew I was pregnant, or I shouldn't have done this or that. But, even though there really is very little that you can do to actually cause a miscarriage besides, participating in very negligent behaviors, very risky behaviors, regular everyday life does not cause a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that's a lot of people feel they have a heavy burden, and they just carry a lot of questions about that, I think.
How do people react to it?
The people who experience it?
Yeah, do they react? I mean, because I think that would be how people, you just said men and women would react to it differently, but I would say that it might be different for people, family people outside the family, or how do people react to you guys?
Sure. So you're asking about not just my husband and I, but also people around us and friends and family. Yeah. Well, like I said, so every man and woman is different, but then also I've noticed that you get kind of a wide range of responses, and I know my family was really understanding. My husband had to be out of town, and my mom dropped everything and came to be with me. And she went to doctor's appointments with me, and that was wonderful and very supportive. And then also you get a lot of varied responses from people, though. And that's one thing when I talk to other people who've been through this, the first thing they say is, you would not believe what someone else said to me after this happened. And I heard comments like, don't worry, you can have another baby, or maybe it just wasn't God's time for you to be a mother, or at least you weren't further along. Think about so-and-so who had a stillbirth. Aren't you glad that wasn't you? And those kind of comments are really unhelpful, I think, because they very much deny the dignity of that life, of that baby that is gone. And so I think that's what I'm really excited to talk about today, is how can we do a better job of taking care of people who are really dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of hardship in their lives.
Mm-hmm. What did you really need to hear from people?
I think what I really needed to hear was, I love you. I'm very sorry this happened. I needed to hear people say, your baby mattered and your grief matters. And especially as a Christian, I felt that this put me in a little bit of a crisis of faith. And I needed to know that not only did my baby matter, but that my baby mattered to God, and that God created my child with a purpose, and that he loved me. And those are hard things to know how to say. And a lot of times, I think that the reason it's hard to talk about these things is because miscarriage is very mysterious. And, if it had been my husband who had passed away instead of my baby, no one would have put their arm around me and said, oh, I'm so sorry, you can get married again. Or, maybe it just wasn't God's time for you to be married. But they felt okay to say those things to me about a baby. And so I think that I just needed to hear people tell me that this baby was real and he mattered, and it is okay to be sad. Mm-hmm. And I never really felt that the majority of people validated those things for me.
So did you have service? Was there a service or more? I mean, because when there's a friend of ours in me and Max in our group who had I think it's a trisomy baby who was born on one day and died the same day, and they had a funeral, and the little Mike carried. It was sad. He carried the little casket in.
Yeah.
And it was but there was some sort of, I don't know, finality to there was some recognition.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like it was recognized that there was a lot. It was sad, but it was a recognition that this little fella existed and he was going to be.
Right.
And whereas there's a miscarriage, I don't know. Where do we go with that?
Right. And so I'm actually hosting a memorial service at my church this month. And I'm really excited because when you have this happen to you, I found that it has thrust me into a club that I did not want to join, but a club of women who've been through similar experiences, and men too. But I think especially the women feel a special kinship there. And we all have been saying, not that any of us wish we had experienced something terrible like a stillbirth or an infant death, which is terribly traumatic and very tragic. But we all said, someone that has an experience like your friend with that baby, when they have a funeral, that's a way of the Christian community coming around them and saying, this really mattered, and we love you, and we want to support you in this. And we just felt like we didn't have that. So as we started talking, it really became apparent to me that we needed to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like you said, and that kind of struck me too, that's human life. Mm-hmm. Even though it wasn't full term, it's still human life, right. And you want to recognize the fact that they existed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And yet when people come up to you and say, oh, you can have another one, that's totally ignoring.
But it doesn't sound like it's a life, does it? Oh, you can have another one.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's something you can get at Walmart.
Exactly.
No, seriously, it does though, doesn't it? I mean, and I've been guilty. I had a friend at home in England and they had triplets, and one died in birth, and one was on life support and has been for a year, and then one was, and it was difficult how to, I'm sure somebody said to them, well, at least one of them were.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean? And it's the same, and the more I think about it, it's the same thing, similar sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we're coming up to break, and you've been listening to 99.3 KTIA. Our guest has been Abby Hummel, and we're going to return and ask more about what it is like to deal with miscarriage. So we'll be back after these messages.
ever get tired of pretending that life is perfect? If what they see isn't how you feel, God knows, and He understands. Chat now with someone who cares at groundwire.net.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. And he said not only would he like to be a sponsor, but he would offer a $100 tithe for every customer that came and bought a car from him directly to the church of your choice. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Have you ever been told you're not a good enough Christian? Well, we have too. Join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. Now here's your host, president of the Not a Good Enough Christian Club, J. Michael McCoy.
Well, this is Cat in the Hat, Bob Montserrat, and I'm not president, but I think I'm a member of the Not a Good Enough Christian.
You're in the cabinet.
Me, what?
You're in the cabinet.
I'm in the cabinet. I guess I am. Maddie Smith is with us today, and Father Tattoo Dan is in the production booth. And yesterday I wasn't here for the show. It was the after the debate show.
And you lucked out.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be here for the show.
I'm just not a political guy, but that gave me a chance to listen to True Blue, which is the show that, well, this is The View from the Pew, and then after The View from the Pew, how's that go? Is True Blue?
Yeah, this is the View before True Blue.
The View before True Blue. So
yeah.
I did get to hear Pastor Michael Mudloff and Chris Roloff talk about, and they're basically talking about how do we be political and how do we vote and that kind of thing. And so I found it to be interesting. Half hour goes pretty fast on that.
Is it only a half hour?
Yeah, it's half hour.
Oh, wow.
And this
so
show,
what were they telling us? They were telling us we had to vote?
Well, they're not telling you anything because you don't get a vote.
I know, but I could
you
try.
Just stay out of our politics. Okay?
Yeah, that flag up there, that's good. I feel like one of our many Olympic gold winners, or maybe Ryder Cup golfers too.
If I knew
with
your
the big flag on my shoulder.
If I knew your favorite football team, I would have put that up. But
okay.
Since I didn't, I put the British flag.
Listen, with all the sporting success that we've had this year, I'm quite happy to stand.
yeah.
So I put my hands up in the air like that.
Yeah.
Do it again. Just
all right, I'm good.
For the camera. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Feel like one of those Ryder Cup Ian Poulter. There you go.
You go. Right. Well, our guest today is Abby Hummel, and you told me that this month is National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month.
Yes.
And I never heard of that before.
Yeah, well, I also think October is Awareness Month for almost everything. So
okay.
it may be awareness month. But yeah, it's been termed that by, I think, a couple of different organizations. And it's actually very common. Statistically, 1 in 3 pregnancies is going to end in miscarriage, and about half of women will experience a miscarriage before they get to the end of their childbearing years. So it really is a very common thing.
Wow. I mean, I had no two and that's a lot.
Yeah, I knew it were. I thought it was 1 in 4, 1 in 3. A couple of my sisters had, two of my sisters have had miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
So
and they say there are various reasons for that.
Absolutely. And I think too, nowadays, I know I could go to Walgreens across the street and buy a pregnancy test for, like $10, I think. And you can find out that you're pregnant so much earlier in the pregnancy. I think I could find out probably 2 weeks before my mom could have found out 27 years ago when she was, finding out that she was pregnant with me. So then naturally that's going to put you at a greater risk to, find out that you're having a miscarriage when, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you wouldn't have even really known.
Mm-hmm. Now I find it interesting that they have it as pregnancy and infant loss.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a very special way when we lump these things together. I think that that's another way to really encourage people who have experienced a miscarriage to say that, your baby was a lot smaller when it died, but that it was still a baby, and that, it definitely is still on that continuum of life.
Mm-hmm. And before we went to break, too, we were talking about some of the wrong things that people say.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got into some of the right things that people say.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked you the question, I asked you, what did you want to hear?
Mm-hmm.
Not as, what was the right thing to say?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that varies from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are people out there, when people have gone through tragedy or trauma in their life, they're afraid to say anything because they're afraid that they may say the wrong thing. And as you experience, they do.
Absolutely.
And so they feel like they need to say something, but they're not quite sure what to say, and they don't want to offend people. But with that in mind, some people may just even avoid you.
Absolutely. And I think I definitely experienced that too. But I think it's also a really good rule of thumb that it's never a bad thing to remind someone that you love them and that you are sorry that something bad happened to them. And, I even had one friend who I think she did a really good job of ministering to us, and we spoke very briefly, and she said, I just want you to know that I love you and I am so sorry this happened. And, and she just ended her email saying, come quickly, Lord Jesus. And to me, that ministered to me so much because that was her way of affirming that this is a sign that everything is not right in the world, because that is what my overwhelming feeling was, that this is wrong. This is not supposed to be happening. And so that's really what I needed, was that affirmation that this is messed up. This is not how it's supposed to be.
Right. I can see that. And the fact is, when you finally get to the point where you decide that you want to have children,
mm-hmm.
and it's such a joy and anticipation,
mm-hmm.
for this event, and that you're getting prepared for that, meaning that you may get a room or you may start
mm-hmm.
buying things. And so there's this great joy, and all
mm-hmm.
of a sudden that joy is turned to sorrow.
Absolutely. And that's it's supposed to be the opposite way. And I think we as Christians, we know that even in, even at the very beginning of the Bible in Genesis, when we're going through the creation story, it says it was evening and then there was morning. And we're supposed to go from sorrow to joy. And with a miscarriage, it's kind of the opposite, because you go from joy to sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And, to be reminded that joy comes again after, that's a very powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming, since this has happened, and it
mm-hmm.
hasn't been that long ago,
mm-hmm.
that you have visited with other people, other women that have had that, or families,
mm-hmm.
I should say,
mm-hmm.
that have
Absolutely.
had this. And so, you've been mentioning how you can encourage people and how you help people.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that for people that have lost,
mm-hmm.
is there a bond, a pretty strong bond, because you've been there before, more so than not?
Yeah, I think so. But I also think it's important when I'm talking to someone who is, maybe has gone through this very recently, it's really important to remember that grief is about that person. And so so I have to be careful when I'm talking to someone that I remember that this grief is about her, and I can, or, her and her husband or him, and I can share my story with them, and I can share how, different Christians and the Lord have just ministered to me so powerfully, but at the same time, their experience is their own. And so on one hand, we have this very strong bond because we have this shared loss. But at the same time, every marriage and every pregnancy, and I mean, this happens sometimes if people are not married, and so I don't want to just automatically assume that, but the circumstances around every situation are different. And so, I think it's important to respect that, someone else's experience might look drastically different from my own. And and that can be a tough thing to walk through with someone.
Mm-hmm. I know sometimes when people have had traumatic things happen to them, sometimes it's just your presence, just being there.
Yeah.
And just be there and let someone, weep or cry on your shoulder.
Absolutely.
And really don't have to say anything, just be there for, to support in that sense.
Absolutely. And sometimes too, to be there for whatever the other person needs is very, very powerful. And I know sometimes for my second miscarriage, I kind of put off my feelings of grief for a while. And I knew that I was doing it, and I knew why I was doing it, because someone else in our immediate family was expecting a baby very soon. And it was kind of like I knew I just needed to wait until that baby came, and then I would be sad and happy all at once. And it's like I couldn't really deal with the emotions yet. And I felt very much like many of my close friends were almost expecting me to be really upset. And I cried about it sometimes, but I just wasn't ready to go to the depths of my grief yet. And so, but some friends were just very willing to say, whatever you feel is okay. You're the one who had the bad thing happen to you, not me. Mm-hmm. And so that, just accepting people's grief for what it is very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. So what do you need? I mean, what did you need, that would help you?
Mm-hmm. I needed those friends and those family members to say, this mattered and we love you. And I just needed that reassurance that however you need to respond to this is okay. And I remember even after my second miscarriage, talking to a friend, I think it was maybe 3 months afterwards. And I, told her, I'm still having a really hard time. I'm still really sad, and I'm struggling with a lot of these kind of like depression sort of feelings. And she kind of looked at me like, really? Even though that was like 3 months ago and you were not even that far along. And I know she didn't mean it in a mean way, but it definitely came across like she did not think that I should be carrying this grief.
Right. Or it could be, well, get over it. It's been, 2 months, 3 months. You ought to be over it by now. And that's ignorance, basically, I would say.
Absolutely.
How long does it take to grieve? Well, as long as it takes.
Yeah. There's no way to say.
Yeah, and there's no time limit on that.
Right.
Now,
it's people. No, it's like it's people just deal with it differently.
Right.
Some people deal with. We had one of the kids in our soccer club. His dad passed away, like in a car accident about a month ago, and his mum emailed us all and told just said about he's thinking of not playing and that type of thing, not playing soccer because it's something his dad used to do with him, and then. But we said, well, it might be the best. Just to play, just to keep playing because you like to play, and that might be a good way. Because when my mother passed away, that's one thing we did. We just maybe it wasn't necessarily. I don't know if it was the right or the wrong thing to do, but that's how we dealt with it. We just helped deal with it. We carried on doing stuff, and sometimes things. And some people don't think that's right, and some people. But I mean, everybody. You find that out. Everybody's different, and every situation's different too. Because even though we all grieve, we grieve more than I would guess. We've all grieved for people more than once, and I bet we've dealt with it differently.
Right.
But we haven't dealt with it the same every time. Depends on the circumstance and lots of how old you are and your where you are at the time. There's lots of factors involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're still in this place where you haven't really had a successful pregnancy.
Right.
So,
well, I guess it depends on how you define success. but yeah, you're right. I haven't, been pregnant and carried a baby to term.
True.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what is. I mean, how
Right.
you define
Yeah.
how you define that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. I guess I probably said it the wrong way. But
That's okay.
See?
Yeah,
Bob,
It's
so-
very easy to do.
You're so insensitive, Bob. You're so insensitive.
How about full term? That's it. Yeah, and I don't try to be insensitive, but see how we screw up as normal human beings. And that's the thing is that I'd like to know how can somebody come up to you and say, well, what do you need right now? What can I do for you? Is that something that would be helpful or not?
Sometimes. I know I had several people that did that, and in a way I almost didn't know what I needed. And I was also almost afraid to ask for help. I mean, I can think it would have been really helpful if somebody had brought me over some freezer meals and helped me fold laundry, because my husband is very, very busy. He's in graduate school. So, I didn't want to have to spend our time together doing those sorts of things. I wanted to just be able to be together. And, and so for me, I felt like I needed some practical help, but I didn't really know how to ask for it. Mm-hmm. And, and people would say, do you need anything? And I would get kind of caught off guard. But, I think that thinking, when you hear that maybe somebody has had a miscarriage, you can think like, what would I do if they had actually had a full-term baby that passed away? Mm-hmm. What would I do then? I'd bring a meal or something like that.
Right. And again, it's one of those things of not knowing what we should do, what you should do to help people, to deal with these things. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what we all struggle with. What do we do? Our guest today has been Abby Hummel. We're going to be back in a moment.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
if you sit in the back pew or the front pew. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Yes, Mac is on assignment. This is Bob Monserrat, Cat in a Hat, filling in for Mac. And don't want you to remember that True Blue is on, about 4:03 this afternoon. With Pastor Michael Mudloff and Chris Roloff. So want you to tune in to 99.3 KTIA. I'm here with Maddie Smith and Father Tattoo, and my guest is Abby Hummel. And we've been talking about miscarriages, and this is National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And I'm kind of out of it because I don't watch much TV, so somebody has to tell me when I'm supposed to be aware of something. So I'm really glad you were able to do that.
You're being aware now.
Yeah,
we're getting a crash course in awareness, Bob.
Yeah, so I appreciate it and to know that. And the fact is that, this is a pretty serious situation when you say that 1 in 3 women will miscarry, and half the women that before they're out of their pregnancy age, or whatever you call it. Boy, I'm really doing bad today. Will experience miscarriage. So I didn't realize it was so prevalent like that. And again, I think you become aware of many of these things when it actually happens to you, whatever that situation is, and then you get educated in what it is, because I think a lot of times you wonder, okay, is this something that's rare to occur, or is this something that is fairly common? Because I think it helps you to put your mind in a certain condition to see what, and I think I mentioned this before, you tend to say, is there something wrong with me or my husband, or am I doing something wrong? Did I put too much fertilizer in the lawn? Did I, clean too many bathrooms and toilets? Right. That it may have caused the problem within me. And I think we think that way.
Yeah, you know something I've gathered from the show and from experiences having friends that have had this happen and stuff like that, is that why it may be common, it may be something that happens often. Each one of these lives is unique, and it's a special thing in the people's lives that it affects. My wife's best friend had a baby that didn't make it quite to term. It was born, and it died shortly after being born, a couple minutes. And on the outside, it was easy for me to go, I don't really understand why this is such a big deal. But then you watch how it affects their life, and you go, wow, this is a huge deal, and you really have to think about it. And I love what she said earlier about being the image bearer of God. That's amazing language right there, because when you think about that, this little person was built in God's image, and it was growing inside of a woman's body. And we were talking about the intrusiveness of the miscarriage and stuff like that. The intrusiveness of being born, it makes a bond with a woman that, as a man, I know I don't understand. And it's very deep and profound. And watching my wife's best friend go through it, I found out all kinds of stuff and how we were unsensitive here. So I think the points I took away from it really are, they are image bearers, and they're unique. And even though it's common, we shouldn't treat it like it's common. We should treat it like it's special, because it was a life, and it's and that bears a lot of merit in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what about being a believer? Do you have, or was there ever anger towards God for this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's only natural, because it's very easy to wonder why did God even create this life if this was just going to happen? Was the sole purpose of this life just to cause me intense grief and pain and heartache? And, even just thinking about medical bills, was the whole point of this child's life that I was just going to have to, meet my insurance deductible for the year or something? And it's very difficult to wrestle with that. And, and to feel like, even I remember thinking, couldn't some of this bad stuff have just happened to someone else? And it's easy to look at my trials and think that certainly someone else could be bearing some of this for me. And I think that does put you kind of at maybe sort of just at a very difficult place spiritually when you're you maybe are angry at God, questioning things, even with very close friends. I almost can't believe I'm saying this on air, but with very close friends, I've even referenced the weekend I was an atheist, because I really struggled. And it's easy to say, how could you do this? How could this happen? And it's a hard thing, because I think that if we don't take miscarriage very seriously, or even a stillbirth, or a loss of an infant, that if we don't take that very seriously, it's like we're not giving people room to ask these questions. And I really did not feel that I was able to kind of talk through that with very many people.
Mm-hmm. What answer did you get when you asked that question? Is that difficult?
God?
Yeah. Is that what? So did you ask that question of God? Well, why?
Yeah. And I don't really have an answer to that, but I do think I've reached a place where I can say, like Jim Elliot said, though he may slay me, yet I will trust him. And that's a hard thing to say when you feel like you're being slain. But
right, yeah. But listen to the tell on what you said there. You said, I asked God, why would you do this? And I was an atheist for a weekend.
I was asking him that.
Yeah, you were asking a God you clearly were believing in. Going, why would you do this? So God's in control. And that's something that I find actually, and this is kind of a rabbit trail, but a lot of atheists and people that struggle with this, God wouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. I've yelled at him, why did he do this? And it's like, well, you just acknowledged that he did it. And that's, that's an important point too.
Well, it's whether you say God did it or God allowed it to happen. So I don't think God did it. I think
God's sovereign. I mean,
but I don't. To say he did it, or did he not?
You're getting into semantics there, though, because it's kind of one of those things. It's a result of the fall. So mm-hmm. it's a result of sin, right. And I think we can clearly say it's a sinful thing that this happens. Not that she was a sinner particularly mm-hmm. or anything like this. It's just the result of sin. Right. The wages of sin are death. But God's aware, and God is in control, and so I mean, I don't even like to get into that conversation, Maddie, because did God do it? Maybe not. But it was a result of sin. However it was done, it is done justly, and that's what we need to remember.
But I think it's easy to think that I'm being punished for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I did something wrong,
mm-hmm.
and I'm being punished by God, and I don't think you can think that way either,
mm-hmm.
because that's he's not there to work in that way. And then you look at Job, who was very faithful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at some of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some examples. David lost his first child, Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, that was due to that sin, and that was made clear
mm-hmm.
in that. And yet he still was faithful to the Lord, and he
mm-hmm.
He prayed that it wouldn't happen,
mm-hmm.
and when it happened, he was finished.
Right.
I don't think the questions are wrong to ask.
Mm-hmm.
No. I mean, the whole of Psalms is full of. Is full of questions. People getting, why? What's going on?
Yeah.
David, what's going on? Why? Why this?
Right,
Yeah.
but still having faith and trust.
Yeah,
in
you can. I think
God.
you can still, and I think you can still ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can, whether you ask them on behalf of yourself, or sometimes you might ask them on behalf
mm-hmm.
of somebody else, or,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do. I mean.
Well, why not? I mean, those are natural things for people to be thinking.
Right.
I'm assuming that all of these things that we're discussing went through your head.
Oh, absolutely. And I can promise you that your audience is probably full of people who have thought the same things. Mm-hmm. But you have to know that it's, that you have somewhere in your church or maybe a Bible study where it's okay to talk about feeling that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, is there a support for this or is this something that's a one-on-one for people that have been there? Do you know of any type of support?
I think that different supportive things come up. I know that online there's a lot of resources today that were not available in the past. And I think this is great because this gives people a chance to talk and tell their stories. And I know even in my own family, my grandma has told stories that when she was a little girl, her mom, my great-grandmother, lost a full-term baby and they never talked about it.
Wow. And I think that was the way that it was years ago.
Yeah.
My guest today, Abby Hummel. We've been talking about the fact that she had 2 miscarriages and how we need to deal with that. You've been listening to 99.3 KTIA. And Mac is on assignment, so this is...
I heard he's writing speeches for one of the candidates.
Yeah, that could be. In a moment.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, and it's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Welcome back. This is Bob Montserrat, Cat in the Hat, and I'm not watching chat because I don't have time to do that. And Mac is out on assignment. And Matty, you said where Mac was.
I've heard rumours going around that he's helping Obama with his debate performance for the next one. So they've hired him. Obama's hired Mac for a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
Well, what is Obama trying to lose? Getting red.
You'll never lose an argument with Mac.
Yeah. Getting red in the face and screaming isn't winning an argument.
No. Well, I'm glad you said it because I wouldn't say that.
No, but you told me I was okay to say it, Bob. So.
Oh, yeah, drag me into it. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, we've been talking to Abby Hummel, who's been a guest today, and one thing that you just kind of brought to my memory was that my aunt, who passed away a long time ago, but I remember as a kid, I would go up in the attic, and in the attic there was a photo of her baby that it was a blue baby, is what I was told.
Yeah.
And it was mounted on the wall in the attic, but the attic was just a storage area. And I used to go up there and I'd say, who's the baby up there?
Yeah.
And yet it was 40 years. I mean, it was just forever. And so she would tell me the story of that little baby. So so what we're saying is it's long term. Is that
right?
correct?
Absolutely. And, and it's something even, and I never had this experience because my pregnancies, even if they had gone to term, would not have overlapped. But even people who have a miscarriage and then become pregnant again very shortly thereafter still feel a great deal of grief for that child that is gone. And then, I have a friend that had that same experience. She lost a baby and very quickly again became pregnant with her daughter. And, so then people will say to her, like, well, look at your daughter. You wouldn't have your daughter if you hadn't had that miscarriage. And what a terrible place, to be put in, to even have to ask that question.
Yeah. I would say something like that, like a jerk, but.
Yeah. Well, and the important thing to remember, too, is that if this happens, that it's not a replacement for the baby you lost. Because that was something Melissa struggled with a lot. She's like, I want to get pregnant again, but I don't want it to be a replacement. I want it to be, I want my next baby to be its own thing and be apart from Lily. And it was a traumatic thing, but it was, like I said, it put a lot in perspective, a lot of things, if you get pregnant right on the heels again, you need to really be careful that it's not just a replacement for that.
Yeah. And, and I think too, even in the way that we talk to people, if I always cringe when I hear someone, chatting with an obviously expectant mother and asking, so is this your first? Because I know, I truly hope and pray that will be me someday, but I cringe when I think about getting asked that question because the answer will be no. But do I really want to go into that?
Right, because if you say no, then they'll say, "Oh, who are your other kids, and how many other kids do you have?"
Right,
and that kind of thing.
And then do I really want to go with somebody who obviously doesn't know me that well? Do I really want to go into all of this?
No.
Well, that's when you just do the poor taste humor. People ask me about, they'll say something about my mom, like, my mom's dead.
Yeah.
And that just kind of shuts them up because they don't know what to do with that. But it's very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it would require, yes, this is my first after the last two miscarriages.
Yeah.
So you could say it that, and that would immediately go, oh.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or, even now people ask me all the time, so are you a mom yet? And I never know how to answer that because I am, but it's also, I really maybe don't want to go into this necessarily with a total stranger who may then, ask lots of intrusive personal questions about family planning that I'm absolutely unwilling to discuss.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And that makes for a problem, especially if you were there, you've had the miscarriage. Mm-hmm. Then you have to think of, how do I answer this?
Well, and it's really important because, again, that's one thing, Melissa, she calls herself a mom. She says her and Travis are parents. And, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's just not an issue I dealt with in my life. So it wasn't something I thought about. And they are, and you are. And it's a legitimate answer, I think.
Right. And, we have words to talk about a wife who's lost her husband or a child that's lost their parent. We have these words, widow and orphan, but we don't have any words for a parent that has no living children.
That's true.
There is
no word.
I mean, it's a very displaced sort of status. I feel like I need to put on Facebook, maternal status. It's complicated.
Yeah. Or come up with a word.
Right.
To explain that. But you're right. You're kind of falling into that void where you can't label it. And so there's a long explanation.
Right.
Where widow, everybody knows.
Yeah, but everybody's, yeah.
Yeah. So I see that. And now it seems to me that your thoughts of what had happened to you would always be triggered, and there would be triggers out there.
Absolutely. And I know for me, both times that I was pregnant, the babies were due right around my birthday. And so my birthday is kind of a rough time for me because I think I'm supposed to have birthday buddies. I'm supposed to, right. and I don't. And, and so that's hard for me. Or, you see a child that's the same age that one of mine should be. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah. So what do you do? How do you deal with your grief then?
I think it's really important to let myself cry if I need to, and, just be very willing to feel that pain. And I also, I definitely try to deal with things productively. I know I did a lot of crafts and art projects and after one of the miscarriages, and I'm a musician, so I, sometimes will channel a lot of that sadness into playing the piano or something like that.
Yeah. And another thing I wonder about, is it something do you dream about or have dreams?
Sometimes. And in fact, both times I was pregnant, I knew that I needed to take a pregnancy test because I'd been having dreams about a child. And so I don't dream a whole lot, but yeah, occasionally, I have very, very stark images in my head of exactly what, these children looked like. And so, occasionally that does pop up in my dreams. And
I'm assuming that's normal.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I think it's difficult because you always wonder what these children could have been.
Right.
And that's not to be at this time. And then I think the other thing you keep thinking is, Lord, what do you have in mind?
Right.
What are you trying to teach me? We go through circumstances in life because he is trying to teach us something. And then down the road, it may be revealed as to what he's trying to tell us and what he's trying to teach us. And so we don't really know. Mm-hmm. And yet, you're at that point and you're there. And so I appreciate you being here to, explain your thoughts, your reactions, your feelings, and how to help others that are going through similar things and will go through similar things.
Right.
And so part of your life I see as being a life where you will get to see people and deal with people and talk to people. So I appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
My guest, Abby Hummel. You've been listening to The View from a Pew on 99.3 KTIA. And after The View comes True Blue with Michael Mudloff, Chris Roloff. And that'll be at 4 o'clock, 4:03 after the news. And like I said, I listened to it. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I hear Mudloff all the time on Tuesdays.
We've got to hear Roloff again.
Yeah, I get to hear him too. So it's pretty good. So,
I miss Roloff.
He's a good lad.
Yeah, I
he's
like
gonna have
that
to come
guy.
visit us again. So
I take pictures of the empty stall next to my car and tell him I miss him.
there you go. See you guys later. Bye-bye.